I've started doing something lately that I never used to do. I look at photographs from 10 years ago and I think, where did that time go? Not sadly, not with regret, just this quiet realisation that time moved a lot faster than I noticed. And the strange thing is, I'm more aware of time now than I've ever been. I want to slow down, I genuinely do, and I've created more space to be able to do that. I've got more freedom and more quiet in my life. And yet there's this other voice underneath it all. It's not urgency exactly, and it's not a sense of panic, just a growing sense that time is no longer this abstract thing. It isn't something that exists somewhere ahead of me. It's here and it's now, and it's moving whether I'm paying attention to it or not. And I think many Gen Xers are just quietly living with this contradiction. We want peace, but we don't want to miss and waste a single day of getting there. And today I want to talk about where that feeling comes from and whether it might actually be something other than impatience. When we're young, retirement feels like another lifetime away. Your 50s feel ancient and your 60s feel almost unimaginable. Life stretches endlessly ahead and you make plans assuming you'll always have time. Time to travel, time to change, time to start something new, time to becoming the person you imagined you'll be. And then one day you realise you're no longer looking forward from youth, you're looking backwards too. And suddenly time becomes real, not frightening necessarily, just in a very real way. You start noticing how quickly decades passed. You remember events that feel recent and realise they happened 20 years ago. For example, when I think about the pandemic, I can't believe it was over 6 years ago. And I think that's one of the biggest emotional shifts of midlife. Time stops being theoretical and becomes very tangible. What surprised me most is this awareness doesn't necessarily make you slower. In some ways, it makes you more urgent. You become less willing to tolerate things that drain your energy, less willing to stay stuck, less willing to postpone things that matter. And that creates this strange sort of conflict because at the same time, many of us are trying to embrace slower living, less rushing, less striving, being more present, having more simplicity and more peace. But we also know that life is finite, and sometimes that creates an impatience, not because we're unhappy, but because we suddenly understand the value of time in a way we never did before. I think many Gen Xers are quietly wrestling with the same question. What do I want to do with the time I have left? Not because we're obsessed with aging, but because we're becoming more focused. The older I get, the less interested I am in accumulating things, and the more interested I am in experiences, in relationships, freedom, meaning. And perhaps that's why certain frustrations feel bigger now, because they cost time, and time feels increasingly precious. And I think that's where this strange impatience comes from. Not wanting more, but wanting what matters. The more I've thought about this, the more I've wondered whether impatience is the wrong word. Maybe what we're feeling isn't impatience at all. Maybe it is focus. Maybe we're simply becoming more aware of what's important. Maybe we're becoming less willing to trade our time for things that don't truly matter. Maybe we're becoming more selective about how we spend our lives, and honestly, I think that's healthy. Because perhaps the goal isn't to slow down for the sake of slowing down. Maybe the goal is to live more intentionally, to spend more time on what matters and less time on what doesn't. I find myself wrestling with this contradiction, wanting peace, wanting simplicity, wanting slower days, and yet feeling more aware than ever that time matters. And perhaps that's the gift of midlife, not panic, not fear, perspective, a clearer understanding of what deserves our attention. And maybe that's why so many Gen Xers are redesigning their lives, not because they're running out of time, but because they finally understand its value. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Do you feel this strange sense of impatience too? Or is it something else entirely? And if you're wondering about this phase of your life, you might like to download my free 10 questions to ask yourself workbook. I've linked it below. I'm Angela. Thank you for watching. And if something in this resonated with you, I hope you'll subscribe and join me for the rest of this journey. Until then, bye for now.